You're familiar with BYD, which is also on the West Coast. I think they're ramping up production of their electric vehicles. Warren Buffett owns 10% stake in that. Why do you laugh? BYD is trying to compete. Why do you laugh?
Have you seen their car?
Back in 1995, manufacturing global batteries was an exclusive, highly capital-intensive game. Giants like Sony and Sanyo dominated the landscape with incredibly expensive automated factories, effectively ignoring the needs of lower-tier corporate clients. Enter Wang Chuanfu. He was a humble Chinese government researcher with absolutely no degree in automobile manufacturing, technology, or design. Seeing the underserved middle market, he took a large loan from his cousin to start his own battery company. To compete with the Japanese conglomerates, Wang had to pivot his operations away from standard industry practices. He realized that while Japan had multi-million-dollar robotics, China had a monthly minimum wage of just $24. So he built simple manufacturing systems that relied entirely on cheap manual labor instead of expensive automation. This required intense frugal engineering. Building toxic nickel-cadmium batteries usually required massive, sterile cleanrooms to prevent defects or fires. Wang couldn't afford a cleanroom building, so he built a sealed, transparent desktop box. Workers simply inserted their hands through attached gloves to assemble the materials inside, perfectly mimicking a sterile environment on a microscopic budget. That single innovation slashed BYD's production costs by up to 80%. By 2002, Wang's cheap, scalable method allowed him to capture a massive 31% of the global market, supplying massive clients like Nokia and Motorola. When you lack the capital to buy high-end automation, stripping a complex process down to manual, scalable parts allows an underfunded upstart to severely undercut wealthy monopolies. In 2003, sensing that nickel-cadmium batteries would soon be obsolete, Wang took the cash flow from his battery empire and made a severe pivot. He decided to build cars. The results were disastrous. For 10 long years, BYD produced terrible vehicles. They had no engine technology, poor driving ranges, and awkward designs. Automakers journalists openly mocked them, treating the company as an industry laughingstock. Meanwhile, over in the United States, a charismatic billionaire named Elon Musk was engineering sleek, revolutionary electric vehicles and building a global reputation for Tesla. Tesla systematically drove its input costs down to an average of $36,000 per vehicle, producing highly desirable cars that dominated the market. BYD's low-end, clunky models completely failed to gain any global traction or respect. Entering a complex, hardware-heavy industry without a baseline in structural design or engineering guarantees a brutal period of low-quality output and reputational damage. And then, the 2020 pandemic hit. Global supply chains froze, automakers everywhere bled cash, and BYD found itself stuck with over 224,000 employees and zero incoming sales to cover payroll. Facing an existential crisis, Wang executed an extreme operational pivot. In just 14 days, he completely repurposed his dormant car factories. Instead of building sedans, his massive workforce began mass-producing surgical face masks. While legacy automotive brands reported catastrophic financial losses, BYD quietly generated $643 million in pure profit just by selling medical supplies to governments and hospitals. Surviving a catastrophic market freeze requires raw operational agility. Pivoting physical assets to meet immediate global panic generates the cash needed to survive until your core market recovers. Wang poured those pandemic survival profits directly into research and development. He specifically targeted a massive vulnerability in standard electric vehicles, the tendency for lithium-ion batteries to ignite during high-impact collisions. BYD engineered the Blade battery using a unique lithium iron phosphate chemistry. In a brutal nail penetration test, engineers drove a metal spike straight through the cell to cause an internal short circuit. Instead of bursting into flames, the battery remained completely cool and intact. Beyond solving the fire risk, BYD finalized its second massive advantage: complete vertical integration. From mining raw materials to designing the hardware to assembling the chassis, BYD began manufacturing almost every component entirely in-house. By cutting out third-party suppliers, BYD stripped a massive 15 to 30% out of their manufacturing costs, allowing them to deeply underprice their Western competitors. Mastering component-level safety while simultaneously owning the entire supply chain creates a structural pricing moat that competitors relying on external vendors simply cannot breach. But cheap, safe hardware wasn't enough to capture China. Millions of middle and lower-income citizens, specifically in Tier 2 and Tier 3 cities, suffered from severe range anxiety due to a massive lack of charging infrastructure. Wang recognized this geographical constraint and adjusted his product line. Rather than forcing fully electric vehicles onto hesitant buyers, BYD heavily prioritized plug-in hybrid electric vehicles, or PHEVs. These hybrids utilize a smaller battery pack for daily driving, paired with a backup gas engine for longer trips. Because the battery is the most expensive component, this architecture drops production costs by 20 to 30%, eliminating the customer's fear of being stranded. This strategy perfectly matched the economic and logistical realities of the Chinese population. BYD's sales exploded across rural and urban demographics alike, ultimately propelling them past Tesla to become the largest seller of EVs in the world. Ultimate market dominance isn't achieved by mimicking a visionary competitor. It is won by looking closely at the specific limitations of your domestic consumers and engineering a frugal, accessible solution that perfectly answers their needs.